Hey everyone. By now, most people within the paramotor community are aware of the ongoing situation with the Sheriff's Department in Brown County, Wisconsin. For those that aren't aware, last week the Sheriff's Department posted what was basically a wanted ad in an attempt to identify individuals who they claimed were using their paragliders to trespass on an active construction site. On this post, they also included two photos of the paramotors flying over what appears to be the construction site in question. This post quickly ignited a social media firestorm, with many commenters pointing out that the operator was operating legally under 14 CFR Part 103, and furthermore, that the Sheriff's Department had no jurisdiction to pursue matters in federal airspace. The Sheriff's Department since removed the original post and posted a new attempt to identify, this time on the grounds of a possible trespass/safety issue in a landfill construction zone. Although there don't appear to be any federal regulations that have been violated, in my opinion, I don't want to get into the particulars of that situation, mostly because I don't have all of the details, nor do I know the full story. It wouldn't be right for me to speculate based on missing or incomplete information, and that's also not the point or my intent in this video. That said, I did want to address this issue, not only because the topic of paramotor regulations, law, and public perception is a topic very near and dear to my heart as a paramotor instructor, but also because this event happened very close to my own neighborhood. There's a lot that I have to say about this, and a lot that I want to say about this, but I think what's most important to talk about is how we're responding to this situation as a paramotor community. It's important for us to realize as a community that this situation is potentially historic in the context of future regulations, law, and public perception surrounding Part 103 operations in the US. Whether or not we live locally, especially in today's connected society where everything is online, has the potential for going viral, and lives forever, this affects all of us. That being the case, this is an opportunity for us to very publicly represent our flying community well, while also improving our local relationships. We should all want this to be a positive outcome for all parties. We have a huge opportunity here to make things right. We have an opportunity to educate those who don't know anything about our sport or regulations. However, when we jump onto these posts and act like an unruly internet mob, when we flood the inboxes of the sheriff's deputy with spam and anger, it doesn't make it any easier for our voices to be heard later on when the time comes to have a constructive conversation that affects the sport that we love. We have to take the high road here. To be clear, I'm not saying that the pilots in this case did anything wrong, but I also think that this is an opportunity for us to take a pause and think about how our daily flying habits may affect the local community or be perceived by those with no prior knowledge of our sport when what we're doing looks illegal or unsafe to begin with. Don't get me wrong, we aren't going to be able to control everyone's opinion of our sport, nor should we try to. The mindset that we have to have is that everyone is going to be exposed to our sport for the first time, whether in person or online, and it's critically important to the future of our sport that their first impression is a positive one. We have to look at our flying through this lens. Are people going to watch us fly by and think, wow, that looks awesome. I want to learn more about that so I can do that too. Or are they going to watch us fly by and think, wow, that's annoying. That guy's flying like a jerk and that's probably illegal. I'm calling the police. This matters to us because, right or wrong, the court of public opinion is going to have an effect on the future regulations surrounding the sport we love so much. Public opinion and goodwill in our communities are resources that we have to protect. We have to remember that flying paramotors is a privilege, not a right, and therefore what's legally permissible may not be beneficial, especially in this day and age when there are eyes, cameras, and strongly divided, polarized opinions everywhere we go. We must realize that future legislation surrounding our sport is inevitable. But we not only have the opportunity now to shape and influence what that looks like in the future, but we should want to maximize this opportunity, not squander it. Future regulations aside, this can also influence the opinion of the uninitiated general public city leadership, FAA representative, or airport manager in your local area who simply don't know any better. All they know is what they've seen. So, that being said, let's talk about what we can do moving forward. In all things flying, be discreet and aim to keep a low profile. When you see someone on the ground watching you or taking photos or taking videos, assume that you're a nuisance and that your presence is not wanted or appreciated. As paramotor pilots, we think that everyone thinks that what we do is awesome. We think that everybody that sees us loves us and everyone wants to learn how to do this too. We were all once in that position. But so often this is not the case, and the people that are taking photos and videos are actually paranoid. Avoid noise pollution, avoid cattle and livestock, and avoid flying low near homes or during hunting season where our hobby starts to intrude on other people's hobbies, livelihoods, happiness, or peace of mind. Don't fly near the same house twice, and don't fly from the same location on a daily basis, especially when considering that most people are either still asleep or just waking up during the morning hours in which we typically fly. If you have a particular flying spot that you value, then use it on a rotation and fly from other locations in an effort to minimize your long-term impact on that local area. And then, once you're airborne, depart the area and enjoy your flying in the least populated and most discreet area that you can find. One of the things that I like to do when flying in a new area or in an area where I assume that most people don't normally see paramotors is to call the local non-emergency line and introduce myself. I usually explain that I'll be flying a paramotor, which is an ultralight aircraft or vehicle that looks like a parachute, combined with an engine and propeller and seat that I sit in, which looks like a backpack. I also explain that while what I'm doing is legal under Part 103 of the Federal Aviation Regulations, also known as the FARs, it's not uncommon for well-meaning, well-intended citizens who don't know any better to call 911 when what they see appears to be an out-of-control skydiver. I tell them that they can expect to get these calls, so I leave my name and phone number and ask them to contact me directly in case there are any questions, comments, or concerns, or prior to dispatching any emergency response or search and rescue efforts. They've always appreciated these calls, and I have been in numerous situations in the past where this puts me in a position to educate rather than respond or be defensive. There are many benefits to this, but the first is that the advance notice of my flying activities typically minimizes the shock value to the local authorities when somebody calls 911. Instead of assuming that the call is due to something that's illegal or unsafe, the first assumption is, oh, that's probably John who just called us an hour ago, who is probably operating legally and safely. We should call him to confirm. The second benefit, which is maybe not as apparent, is that I'm establishing a positive line of communication with the local community. If I'm flying somewhere that someone doesn't appreciate me flying and they call 911 as a result, I probably don't want to be flying there either, and that's not only something I want to be aware of, but also something that I want to make my buddies aware of. The third is that this very conversation is an opportunity to preventively and proactively educate, which hopefully avoids the need for us to respond reactively, defensively, or emotionally. Open lines of communication and proactive civil conversation is the best thing for all parties here. I'm about to get off of my soapbox, but I just want to close with this. We can be totally legal in how we operate, but wrong in how we respond to situations like these. Whether in person or online, remember to treat everyone that you come into contact with respect and dignity, and always remember that people will never forget how you treated them or made them feel. Even when it's hard or unfair, especially when it's hard or unfair, we have to be the bigger man or woman in these situations and conduct ourselves as ambassadors of the sport at all times. If this sport is something that you truly love, then you have to make the decision now to protect it well. Let's make sure that everyone's first impression of our sport is a positive one. If you agree or disagree with anything that I said, or there are any best practices that you use that I didn't mention, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks everyone. Love y'all.